All righty, it's 6:33, and we're going to start this show, get it on the road here. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have some entertaining slides and also some good facts on how the season's been going so far. Also, a little bit about atmospheric rivers, a little bit about El Nino, and even a hint of what's to come next year. How's that? I'm joined by Andrea Hamilton. Andrea, please say hi. Andrea is going to be helping us out here. You'll be able to enter your chat questions, and then we'll take open season on questions after we're all done. Andrea, any words?
Thanks for coming. And later on, after I download the list of participants, then I'll pick two winners at random. I'll pick a winner for we got a gift card from Crystal Hotels for $200 value, and Mike from Zevo is pitching in some goggles. That's $2 to $250, and I'll email the winners later on tonight.
All right, thanks everybody for showing up, and we're going to talk about the weather coming up here on this February 13th. So let's get into the program here and see what we've got. How's the season been going so far, and what was the forecast? Well, the season so far has been variable. We had those warm atmospheric rivers. We had kind of a slow start, that's for sure. We had that one Arctic cold spell, and the snowpack is below normal. That said, most of the reports and my own experience is the ski resorts are doing pretty decently. There's not a lot of off-piste or not a lot of powder days, but there's been a lot of good groomer days and sunshiny days as well. The forecast this year was for El Nino. We certainly had this strong El Nino still in progress, and the forecast was for below normal snowfall. And I said early in the season, the first powder alert, warmth will cause problems for skiers, and it has because of high snow levels and some melting snow. And the warmth is caused by El Nino, the warm ocean temperatures, and there's background global warming going on for the last 20 years. So that's been causing a problem. That 2 degrees Fahrenheit on average boosts the snow levels just a little bit, maybe 500 feet on average. But we still get cold storms and we still get mild storms, and that's kind of been the same. I've been trying to make it snow. I'm an old man yelling at the clouds there, but it's a big opponent there on the right, El Nino. Back in 1996 on Saturday Night Live, Chris Farley, was Mr. El Nino. But it's been tough. El Nino's been strong, just like we thought, and California's been getting a lot of the precipitation you saw next week, and we'll see in the next couple of weeks. We're right in the middle, sort of the El Nino nudge, so to speak. But first, I'm going to take a look at temperatures right now, and temperatures and snowfall for the next few days. Here's what the forecast is. We do expect new snow. So here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow, 500-foot snow level. We couldn't even see a little wet snow down the lowlands. But in the mountains, during your ski day, it'll start off maybe even with a little sunshine, but certainly increasing clouds, and it'll be snowing by the end of the day, probably by the time you leave. We're going to get a shot of snow Wednesday night into Thursday. Now, this shot of snow is mainly aimed south of I-90, so Summit will get some, Stevens will get a little bit, Baker will get little or none. Crystal will probably get the most, but so will White Pass will get a good shot of it too. And that'll be your powder day for Thursday morning. Expect new snow. Again, 2 inches in the northern Cascades, but 10 inches in the central and southern, mainly southern Cascades, White and Crystal. It'll clear up and still be cold. This is good quality snow too, by the way, with low snow levels. And just to trace a new snow on Friday, but those groomers will be absolutely perfect on Friday. And then Saturday, partly sunny, still remaining cold. So good weekend coming up, I'd say, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday as well. A lot of sunshine for your holiday weekend. So that's how it looks. Again, most snow to the south, Summit, Crystal, and White. Here's what they forecast for the next 126 hours. That's through later in February, through Sunday, I should say. So through the weekend, you can see very clearly on this image that shows where the snow is, and it'll be mainly Central Cascades South. Bachelor, some folks were talking about Bachelor earlier. You'll get a good dump there. Sierra will get a good dump, but north, like Whistler and Baker, not much, a trace at best. So the stuff is going south, and that's what we expect during El Nino. We're going to talk a little bit now that we've covered the forecast for the next few days. And by the way, after that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday look fairly dry, and no significant snowfall coming for at least a week after this round coming up later tomorrow night and Thursday. So let's talk about skiing atmospheric rivers. These are these narrow and warm bands of very moist atmosphere that comes, hits the mountains, really dumps the rain, and snow levels go soaring. So a lot of times you'll have snow, then rain, then snow. In the passes, it can get really complicated with easterly winds and really cold temperatures. And then also atmospheric rivers are of tropical and subtropical origin. So you get a lot of fog, you get wind, and with this change in temperatures, you get avalanche problems. Again, avalanches are really only out of bounds and not on the roadways and not in the ski areas. Not that there's a zero chance on the freeway or the roadways and inbounds, but there's a lesser chance because they do avalanche management in the ski areas and on the roads. But you're on your own in the backcountry. During an atmospheric river, never a good idea to go backcountry skiing because you got all these fluctuations of wet snow, rain falling into the snowpack, makes the snowpack really unstable. So sometimes there can be deep snow when these ARs hit. I'm going to call them ARs, atmospheric rivers. Just before they hit, there's cold air in place. You'll get some snow, and then it'll get scoured out with warmer air. And then after the atmospheric river moves through, you'll get cold air again, and it'll start snowing. So there's a lot of things that happen. Here's an interesting one on December 3rd. You probably remember this one a while back. The atmospheric river would roughly lie where this green area is. And so that's around this low pressure area, and it brings cold air behind this front, this weather front, warm air ahead of it, and the atmospheric river resides right ahead of the cold front and really dumps the precip. One good thing you should always remember about these atmospheric rivers is typically when they do move through, you get this cold air right here, and these spotty clouds, these are open, what are called open cell Q, and they cumulus clouds, and they can produce a lot of snow and good quality snow when they slam into the Cascades. So you can get a real bonus sometimes after these atmospheric rivers. Here's what they look like schematically. The jet stream is not the atmospheric river. That's way high in the atmosphere, about 30 to 40,000 feet. And think of the jet stream as a stream of air that directs the storms, but also will modify the storms or magnify them sometimes. It's a stream of air that's really strong that can essentially exhaust the air upward, and this causes lift and precipitation. And the cold sector is behind this. I remember I told you about the cold air, and the warm sector is ahead of it. The atmospheric river resides right in the warm sector, right ahead of the cold front. So remember, you can get rain going all over the place, and some of that rain may be snow behind the front and even ahead of the front. But the core of the atmospheric river is usually pretty warm and pretty high snow levels. How high? 5,000 or 6,000 at least, sometimes 7,000 to 10,000. They're usually, in my book, over 7,000, which puts them above most areas from Whistler all the way to Bachelor, although upper Bachelor probably gets snow in some of these. And so here's how it looks really, how one might look with snow to the north, warm air, and rain to the south. And I wanted to show quickly a couple of things you should consider with these atmospheric rivers is, where is the cold air? Is it in place? Is there cold air in place? Does that mean it has to scour that cold air out to get the mild air? There might be cold air coming from eastern Washington. Also, these atmospheric rivers do punch over the Cascades into Mission Ridge and 49 degrees north, one of our sponsors, and Silver Mountain in Idaho, another one of our sponsors. So sometimes they get some warming, and since they're colder inland, sometimes they aren't as hammered as we are by the atmospheric rivers. So there are some spillovers. And remember, north of the AR is cold, and so eventually cold air does come in, and oftentimes these ARs will decay and move to the south. Here's another look at what one might be. The low you can see curled up here. Isn't that fine? That is a fine looking storm. Brings down this cold air. So the cold air is coming from way up here, up in Alaska, in the Gulf of Alaska, comes whipping around this low like this. So these are all, this is the area, this spotty area here, this is where you want on top of you. This will produce the best powder days, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But you got to get through the AR. Whoops, got to advance there. Remember, warm sector ahead of the AR, and the air resides right there. Okay, here's that cold, snowy, this spotty stuff behind this AR gets in there. it's golden. So just remember, ARs can be bad, but afterwards, we saw this about a month ago. The AR scoured out some of the snowpack, but afterwards it gained it all back and more. This most recent AR, about 10 days or 2 weeks ago, that scoured out a lot of snowpack and a lot did not come out. It didn't melt the snowpack out completely, maybe in the very low elevations at 3,000 feet, but the ski areas survived. Just wasn't that pretty. Okay, so now we'll get into El Nino a little bit more here. El Nino produces this extended jet stream down to the south. It produces wetter weather down through Southern California and snows in the mountains of Arizona, Southern Colorado, and New Mexico. Arizona and New Mexico have had really a lot of snows, and so they've been doing pretty good, and it produced warmer weather for us. This low kicks up these storms from the southwest, ARs and other storms, make it warmer for us. And this is exactly what we're seeing. I mean, this is textbook El Nino. You'll see it again later this week into this weekend. We'll start to get dry again in California. You're going to hear more about storminess down there and through the southwest. So that's happening. And a lot of people wonder about El Nino. Look at this. There's no effect in Tahoe, Utah, or Colorado. That's not to say they aren't affected by normal weather. In fact, Utah and Colorado are having a very good year right now and a great last week, and Tahoe is still a little bit below normal. So these areas do not have a predictable El Nino connection. This is a big misunderstanding most people have. They don't understand Tahoe. Southern California does, but not Northern California. This has been proved over and over again. So some places are not affected at all by El Nino. Remember, last year was big La Nina, and Tahoe had that incredible snowfall, and so did Southern California, and so did much of the Southwest. So there can be natural variation laid on top of this. Also, worldwide effects by El Nino. A lot of people think about Europe. Europe not affected by El Nino. You can see there they had a really good December in the Alps, from what I understand, but not as good January. Other places in the tropics, like Australia, get affected, but not all of Australia. And so just when you hear people blaming everything on El Nino, it's just not true. And there's no such thing as an El Nino storm. There are just patterns like we're going to see in the next week, and we saw last week, that are conducive. And that's this wet southwest storm track and warm up in the northwest. Okay. So we have a strong El Nino right now. It's starting to weaken, but it's still very strong. And so the impact will remain at least for another 2 months. And for us, of course, it means warmer and probably less northwest snow from the warmth, and the storm track will be to the south. And this proves that, look, the last 90 days, you can see up in the Pacific Northwest, and this includes the inland Northwest, the brown is drier than normal in the last 90 days. Now there's a little, there's a little spot there. I'll go back, sorry. There's a little spot there, but look at the Southwest. It's wetter than normal. So the pattern isn't completely pure, but you don't have to squint much to see this dry up here and wet down here. Also, look at warmth just about everywhere, but warmth up in the Northwest here on the warm map, or the temperature map is to the right. So it's pretty good so far. And again, it's not, it comes and goes, you know. There's natural variation on top of this tendency for these storms to happen. So it's not no death sentence, but it's really living up to the textbook right now. Here's peaks and valleys of El Nino and La Nina. La Nina is to the bottom, and El Nino is to the top, the red areas. And you can see to the extreme right, that's where we are, and that shows where the El Nino is now. So we're at one of the bigger ones that we've had in the last 20 years. This is a very strong El Nino, but it is starting to weaken, but it isn't down to neutral status. But wait till you see what's coming. So here's the precip forecast. The one on the left is for below normal precipitation. That means below normal snow for February, March, and April from the Climate Prediction Center. Above normal in the Southwest. This reflects the El Nino nudging. Warm for much of the Northwest and even parts of California. So they are incorporating that El Nino into their forecast there, and that's why it's balanced that way. Okay, here's what's interesting. The El Nino is still going to, you can see the red bars to the graph on the left. So it's going to be El Nino for the next couple of months. And then look at that gray or neutral starts to take hold for March, April, May. And look at the blue coming down at you. This is it, gang. This is La Nina, and that usually does really well for us in the fall and winter during for the Pacific Northwest. So next, and this map to the or this graph to the right also shows we're pretty much at the peak. Notice all the lines; those are different models. They're going downward to neutral, and then they're crossing that 0, 0 line, and then going negative, which is La Nina. So look at that next year. Now this isn't in stone; things can happen, but right now I think it's pretty likely that we'll have La Nina. That would be my bet. It's just all the models have been continuously saying that, but we'll watch it. It doesn't really lock into place usually till late summer, early fall, but I would bet on it right now. So La Nina for 24-25 season typically brings near to above normal snow. Happy skiing next year. All right, we're going to take a look at the snowpack, see who's feeling the pain and who's not. The red and also yellows and orange are below normal snowpack. So you can see up toward the North Cascades, it's not doing too well. There's several places in Vancouver, BC that have closed. Those Grouse Mountain and Seymour have closed. I was just up at Whistler last week. It's 65% of normal, but they're doing really good. I thought the groomers were in good shape, and you could ski off piste a bit in the upper bowls. We had some fresh snow, so I think everybody's managing the snow pretty much. Crystal, I got a good report today, but everybody is below normal. So off piste is limited. It's not recommended for the most part. There's going to be some thin spots. Be careful. And this extends all the way through much of the west. But as you get farther south, you notice towards Sun Valley and over here in southern Idaho and parts of Oregon too, you start to pick up some mixed. Little better. The green is better, more closer to normal, 90 to 109% of normal. See, Tahoe down here is still below normal. I don't have Mammoth, but they're getting closer to normal. Look at these places in the southwest Arizona and southern Colorado, and of course, all of Utah is doing really well. So it's been showing that variation, and that's what the forecast shows too. Here's a look at how it compares. Baker's really struggling with below normal snowpack. You'll see that those lines below the orange line are some of the worst years, and so they're kind of tap dancing along some of the worst years. Those upper lines are those huge La Nina years. The lower lines tend to be the El Nino years. Same with Crystal. Crystal's doing a little bit better, and so is White and Snoqualmie and Stevens. But they're still below normal. You can see so we'll need several more feet to get there. We did actually lose some snow with that atmospheric river last week, or about a week and a half ago, I should say, almost 2 weeks ago. There was actually snow loss going on there, so that can happen. It will build back, but that's the status. That's how it looks, below normal. Here's a SNOTEL site, which is an instrumentation site. This is at 6,000 feet, so it's rather high, but it kind of exaggerates or shows some of what's been going on. We had kind of a slow start here, and Christmas was below normal. Then we had a pretty good run of it right around December, and then we had the atmospheric river. We lost a little bit of snow, then gained it back really quickly. Look at how fast we gained it back, and then it kind of stayed steady. A little bit of snow here and there, a little bit, and then we had a pretty good gain in early January, and then it's been a kind of a steady gain, and then we lost a lot about a week or two ago with this atmospheric river, and then we started to gain it back a little bit. See, so it does gain back. Oops, sorry. And the normal is this green and blue line, so that's kind of normal. You can see we're still a ways from the end of the season, but we're getting about halfway through there. You can see how much snow we can lose there. Several inches of what's called snow water equivalent, which is a proxy for the actual snow depth. Here's another look. This was January 2nd of this year. You can see we're kind of hurting, but we have picked up. We're still below normal, but we're now farther, far closer to above. I should say closer to normal, but we're still well below normal. You can see the orange areas and the Olympic Peninsula is really hurting for snow over there. So it's been hurting for everybody. We gained some, but we're not quite there. So what are we going to need? So the current ski area depth is about 3 to 5 feet. We're going to need to get near average. We're going to need at least 3 to 6 feet. So that'll help the off piece too. And as long as we keep getting these refreshes too, the groomers are pretty good. So the next 10 days, I'd say we're going to see anywhere from a low end of an inch, mainly North Cascades, Stevens northward, to 12 inches southward from Snoqualmie, Crystal, and White southward, because it's just really the most snow we're going to get is this storm coming up in the next 48 hours, late tomorrow night into Thursday. And then after that, it looks like a kind of a dry, not a complete dry spell, but just like an inch or two here or there, which helps, but it's not the big snow builder we need. So also to the right, those little graphs show you what 10 inches of fresh snow, it really does settle to about 5 to 8 inches of snow, but it has the same amount of snow water equivalent, which what we call SWE. That's what we kind of use as a proxy, but it also allows us to compare true snowpack. Couple of questions I had last time were on this convergence zone that you hear about constantly. And convergence zone, it usually is after a front and we have kind of west northwesterly winds hitting the Olympic Peninsula, and part of the wind goes to the south and comes up and rejoins about Everett and Seattle area, mainly north of Seattle to Everett. And then wind comes through the strait and goes downward. So that creates, but you can have multiple ones of these too. You can have multiple convergence. So you can have one that hits Mount Baker. You can have one that hits Crystal, and they move around too. But this is like the classic. When you usually hear it, this is usually the one that's happening. So I would say most of the time, this is the one. When the original paper was done in 1981 by Cliff Mass, just kind of discovered these things. He described this one, but he also underlined the fact that there were multiple ones. It's our terrain. I mean, this is an awesome place to live with weather, and the terrain does all this wacky stuff. These convergence zones are really interesting. They can provide for incredible snowfall, because here's the thing. After the front goes through, you get the coldest air. So the snow level stays low and you get this moisture, and it's aimed a lot of times right at Stevens. They really benefit, but I've seen it benefit them go down, sweep down through the Cascades, and then also Baker will benefit too sometimes. Here's what they look like on the radar. You know, they're kind of this cigar-shaped band that kind of goes over from the Kitsap Peninsula, sometimes all the way to the southern part of Whidbey, over to Everett, and then extends into the Cascades. But we love the low snow levels, these things. You never have a high snow level with these. In fact, sometimes you have these, and they'll bring snow right down to the ground to Everett. So it brings cold air down with it, with these convergence zones. So a couple quick questions we had beforehand. I'll answer these quickly. There was a question about surface snow conditions. Can we predict those? And I think what they meant by this is, like, you know, sometimes it's like crunchy, sometimes it's soft. And really, I mean, this is the Holy Grail. I mean, I couldn't really do it. I mean, the best thing I do is, like, the day before, I go, okay, it's soft today. Is it going to melt tonight and then refreeze? Are the groomers going to help this? Is off-piece already frozen? I mean, I asked myself, what is it like today, and what's going to happen tonight? And so what will be back tomorrow? Obviously, when you get fresh snow, you know it's going to be soft, generally speaking, too. But it's hard to forecast a surface snow condition. Heck, we have a hard enough time getting the snowfall amount right. El Nino storm, as I mentioned earlier, no such thing as an El Nino storm. There are just storms that happen during El Nino years that have a certain track and a certain characteristics, as I said before. Climate change is going to change snow levels. There's what most models are saying in the next 20 to 30 years, they'll probably in general go up on average 1,000 feet. And so, but that's not every storm. Some storms might go up a little bit more. Some storms will still stay plenty cold. So you still get a mix. It's just when you average that mix over a season, you go, oh, the snow level over average of the season is a little higher than it used to be. There will be probably an increase of snow in higher elevations. How high? Well, it's hard to say. I mean, here's the thing. There looks like there's going to be more precipitation during the core of the winter with global warming, and that will put more moisture in the higher elevations of the Cascades, where it'll still be freezing. Now, so a lot of the ski areas kind of straddle that high and low elevation. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Best weather model. I'm always asked this. You hear all these people. This drives me crazy. This model's this model's that, and you can do statistical analysis on which model does better. But you know what? You don't know which model is going to do the best during the storm that you're interested in. And nobody knows beforehand what model is going to be. I've seen plenty of times where supposedly the best model busts. So nobody knows. And people that probably pretend that they know what the best model is, they don't know. What are the best websites? There's a lot of good websites. National Weather Service is good. Cliff Mass has a good website with his blog. A lot of good educational stuff on that, and he does some local weather too. There's another one called Weather West that's based out of California that has some good stuff once in a while, especially climate-related things. So there's a lot of good, fun websites to look on. Of course, our own powderpoobah.com. And thanks for everyone for subscribing. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about the late season. When is the late season? Well, it's kind of Marchish, but maybe April and May. One thing about here in the north, we have the best late season skiing of anybody. We can have terrific. I've skied a powder day at Mount Bachelor on Mother's Day. I mean, 10 inches of powder and light powder. Now I had to get on it right when the chairlift opened because it got mashed potatoes by 10:30. But it can happen, and we've had great powder days in April. And here's another thing: our snowpack is usually deepest by April as well. So we haven't really normally we don't lose much snowpack, maybe the very low elevations. But so April, our snowpack still is. It's probably the deepest of the whole year. So I like the fact that days are longer. It's light. You can ski to in April, and it's still light out at 6 o'clock. Or it's still super light at 3 o'clock while you're on the slopes, and so that's good. So the visibility is better, light is better, snowpack is better. You can still have some good storms, but it does get mushy, and in the sun, they can get kind of mushy too. But I love the late season skiing, and we have really the best here in the Northwest. So that's why I think this second half of the season is best. And I'm going to wrap it up right then, and we're going to open it up to some questions. And I hope you enjoyed the show. And there was a mixture of good and bad news there. But
hang on. So somehow we've had people stuck in the waiting room.
Uh-oh.
And I don't know why that's going on. And then poor Arnie couldn't get in. I don't know why. So I'm going to ask his question now that he emailed me. I'm looking at my computer. Arnie wants to know, and I'll let him know in the email, is Crystal Mountain weather. He wants to know if the potential snow will hold off until 3 p.m. tomorrow. I'm not sure.
Oh, the question is kind of like, when's it going to start? That's getting close to the edge. I think your first half of your day is going to be fine. It'll be thickening up. I think it could hold off till 3, but there's a chance by afternoon. I think the bulk of it will come well after 3. It'll come really, really Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So I think, yes, there is a better than 50-50 chance it'll hold off till after 3. But I don't think it's a 0 chance. All right.
Okay.
Boy, that is a really dialed in question.
Okay, so Brendan wants to know, about April. Where is the best April skiing? He's wondering, is it Idaho?
Well, here's the thing. Anybody that's having a good year usually pushes their year into April anywhere. And I think a couple places to watch for is California is going to have some good skiing. So some of those areas in California, Southern California and the Southwest and parts of Utah and Colorado and Arizona will also have this. They'll push their skiing into April. For us here in the Northwest, my best bets have always been Crystal sometimes stays open a little later. Bachelor definitely does. I ski almost every year in Bachelor in April or May. It's good. Whistler, of course, does. They're really good skiing up there. It's really fun, and it all depends. Some areas will stay open later and some won't. But I think those are the more reliable ones, the ones I just met. Mammoth, I mentioned Mammoth and Southern. They stay open. I think they stayed open last year till after the 4th of July. Remember they had this epic year last year. Mammoth tends to stay open. So you folks with Icon passes, there you go. Fly into Reno, but it's drive down there. But it's kind of a neat drive there in the Eastern Sierra. Um, let's see. There's a couple of the Tahoe areas do stay open. Palisades or Heavenly sometimes when they have good snow, but they're not. Tahoe's not having a great year so far. It's more to the south and are having a better year.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Someone wants to know, where's your hat?
Where's my hat? It's at the. It's a yeah. It's at the laundry. It takes months to clean that thing. After New Year's, I wore it for New Year's, and people were spilling beer. They thought it was very funny, but it takes a while to the dry cleaners to get it all cleaned up.
Okay, well, Scott Ryan is heading to Bogus Basin next week. Do you have a long range inland snow chance?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bogus and Sun Valley, they'll get some of that action from California. So the brunt of it's going into California, but a lot of it spins up toward southern Idaho, that is Bogus, McCall, and Sun Valley, but also parts of Oregon too. It just kind of doesn't quite get to us, you know. And so here in Western Washington, I'm saying, and our folks to also in Eastern Washington too won't get the brunt of it. So yeah, you'll get some of this action out of Bogus. I would definitely dial that in.
Um, oh, by the way, just everybody, I will get the replay with the slides and the transcript uploaded to the website by Thursday. I've added the link here in comments, but it will also be on in the next Powder Alert on Sunday, and I'll put it on social, so it will be it will be up soon. So Louise wants to know, how does a La Nina season impact snow in Japan? And will next winter be the right time to go to Niseko?
Oh, that's a good one. I don't know what the connection is with La Nina and Japan. I just know with us. My suspicion is La Nina and El Nino are not, they're opposites in some ways, but think of La Nina as more of an enhanced normal. So whatever's normal, you kind of juice it up. Like California is kind of normally a little bit on the dry side. Well, they're during La Ninas, they tend to be a little bit more dry. We tend to be a little bit on the wet side. During La Ninas, we tend to be more wet. So think of La Nina as an enhanced version of normal. So I suspect it's the same thing in Japan. Go to Japan in January. That's the best month, by the way, because you have the perfect setup of that cold, dry air coming off the Asian continent, moves over the Sea of Japan, and then it dumps like there's no tomorrow.
Okay, that's good to know because I'll be on that trip, maybe. Mark wants to know, he says El Nino and the ARs seem to be negatively impacting Mount Baker more than any other area. Is there any reason for optimism for March and April?
Well, I wish I could say yes, but here's the yes part of it though. I think we can only see out about 10 days. And but quite frankly, El Nino, this is although this Mount Baker has taken a beating on this one. Part of it was because a lot of these storms were just coming from the southwest and going along the coast. And the ones that did penetrate inland, they penetrated more into the central and southern Cascades. But in the short term, I can't say I do, and in the long term, it's a little more fuzzy. But on the other hand, El Nino is not kind to them. La Nina is very kind. I mean, they set the world's record for deepest snowfall during La Nina. But here's another thing. There's natural, even though El Nino nudges things a certain way, there's natural variation on top of it. So things can happen. Just like last year, remember that was La Nina, and California had one of their record deepest snowfalls, and La Nina normally produces dry weather. So things can happen, and it's not the whole season, it's part of the season. So that's the only optimistic sign I can give you, but I can't give you much in the next 10 days.
Okay, Jack's, he says he's just back from Telluride last week, was very good, hoping the next AR drops south again.
Yeah, so and it will. The AR that's going to be attached to these next, there's two more big storms coming for California, at least two more that we can see. And these will also push into southwestern Colorado, Telluride, northern Arizona, southern Utah, and they'll really spread through California too. But there is a favor. This El Nino storm track does favor this southern kind of tier of Southern California into Arizona and New Mexico. So those areas will be hit again. And some of that spins up into Utah and central Colorado too. So that's why we're not getting any precip. That's where it's all going, and it just undercuts us. And that's it.
Okay. John, Larry, you're the best for picking POW days on Stevens. Ski on. And
Oh, thank you.
Jason asked, do you anticipate more seasons that have a start like this one as a result of global warming and climate change?
I would think so, just because of this background warming. But there's a lot of variation in the beginning of the ski season every year, even before global warming. So kind of yes and no. Here's another thing, during the past, like 20, 30, 40 years ago, we didn't have grooming or that much grooming. We didn't have hardly any snowmaking. I mean, the resorts really do. I was up in Whistler. The resorts do an incredible job of buffing out everything. I'm sure it's the groomers, but you get a lot of fun, and you just need a little extra snow on the side. So, but the answer to your question is, we haven't seen a trend, at least at the end of the season, to have earlier melt-offs for the Cascades. I'm not sure what the beginning trend is, because it's kind of variable. Some areas start with need more snow to start than other areas. Some areas have quite extensive snowmaking that helps them out start. So it's hard to pinpoint like what's causing them to start or not start the early season if they do not or don't have much snowmaking or have a lot of it. So it's Whistler has extensive snowmaking. My God, they can snowmake that mountain from top to bottom. You can get so it's yeah, we're gonna have global warming. We're gonna have some problems around the edges, but early season has always been, even in the great years, it's always been difficult or variable, I should say. Sometimes it's great. I mean, I've skied up at Baker late October, early November before early season on natural snow. That was a
Okay.
few years back, though.
Okay, on Whistler, Paul says in December we experienced pouring rain just below Roundhouse on Whistler, but it was snowing down to the base on the Blackcomb side. He says it's been perplexing me ever since. Do you have any idea what weather pattern could cause this drastically different snow level between Whistler and Blackcomb?
Okay, where was it raining at Roundhouse and snowing at the bottom?
Pouring down rain just below Roundhouse, but then
Okay.
snowing to the base at Blackcomb side.
Okay.
Paul, you
Well,
can get
that
on if you
is,
want
yeah,
to
you're
go
right. They're so
ahead.
close. That is a little unusual. Here's what happens though. Sometimes in these transitions, you remember they get that cold east wind coming out of that drainage that drains from eastern or kind of central BC. And when you get a transition of these atmospheric rivers, they bring in warm air and then they got the cool air underneath. And sometimes you get it layered up, warm and cold, and it can produce dramatic changes in really short amounts of space. I mean, we've seen it, rain maybe at the top of Alpental and snow at the bottom because it's got that easterly wind out of eastern Washington. So I can see the same thing happening at Whistler too. That it'd be unusual, and what would surprise me if it lasted too very long. Usually in these transition, it just takes a while for either the cold air to be dominant or the warm air to be dominant, but usually they get scoured out. But yeah, weird things can happen when you get these overlying cold and warm air layers with an atmospheric river.
And then Steve wants to know, in general, what weather conditions favor good snowfall for Schweitzer?
Good snowfall for Schweitzer. Well, there's a couple of different patterns that will help Schweitzer out. Of course, any of these specific storms coming into Western Washington that breach the Cascades, they'll hit 49 degrees north and Silver Mountain, and then, of course, move up into Schweitzer. And so those Pacific storms are one track. There are also a track that comes north from the north down the Rockies that they'll get, even though they technically aren't in the Rockies there, they're a little west of the Rockies. They do get some of that action coming down from the Rockies. So it's this balance of kind of colder and drier storms, but cold enough to still produce snow from those Rocky Mountain storms, and the Pacific storms, which are milder. And the best thing to have is a little bit of both, because you want the moisture coming off the Pacific. Otherwise, those dry Rocky Mountain storms sometimes don't produce much snow. Quality snow for sure, but not as deep as snow as you might get. So they tend to get both there at Schweitzer's. That's the advantage there, Schweitzer and 49 degrees, and also Silver Mountain.
Okay, we have another question from John. Yeah, you had to wait. Thank you for waiting. Thank you, everybody. How much snow is predicted for Stevens Wednesday night through Thursday?
Well, yeah, I was trying to sort that out before we went, because a lot of people, we were right on the edge. I think, here's my guess right now. I mean, Baker will get a dusting to an inch. I think Stevens might get 2 to 4. It might be a little optimistic, but let's go 2 to 4. I think Alpental and West will get, 2 or 3 to maybe 6. Crystal will probably get 7 to 10, and White will do well too, and they'll probably get 7 to 9, somewhere in there. So it certainly favors the south. That's just the way it goes. But yeah, this storm is really favoring kind of south. Well, thank you very much, Andrea, and thanks everyone for tuning in here. I know the season's been a little variable, but there's still good skiing up there. I mean, I just talked to somebody today that was up at Crystal, and they said it was really nice. And so get up and go and enjoy the sunshine. And it's going to be a powder day on Thursday morning, so enjoy that too. So you got a little bit of both. But that's a look at the season up to this point, and what's up for the next week or 10 days. But ski on and have a good one.